Lorraine never expected that the place she called home would be taken from her. In a shocking move, the state stepped in and forced her, along with her siblings, out of their home, leaving friends and family heartbroken. You won't believe the reasons behind this dramatic and heartbreaking decision. For years, Lorraine had believed her home was a sanctuary, a place where she could relax, laugh with her siblings, and feel safe from the outside world. It wasn't much, just a modest house, slightly worn down, but filled with memories. Each corner held a story. The living room where she and her siblings celebrated birthdays, the kitchen where they argued playfully over who got the last piece of pie, and a small backyard where summer evenings were spent chasing fireflies. It was a home, in every sense of the word. But all of that changed in the blink of an eye. What started as a normal day quickly spiraled into chaos. Lorraine, along with Timmy and Ray, woke up to a sight that none of them were prepared for. Unfamiliar vehicles parked outside their home, flashing lights, and officials they had never met before knocking on their door. Confusion turned to fear. As the reality set in, they were being taken. Betty, Lorraine's older sibling, was at home when the first officials arrived. The scene was chaotic, filled with questions, demands, and urgent explanations. "We're here for Lorraine, Timmy and Ray," one of the officers said, their voice steady but cold. Betty's mind raced. She tried to understand what was happening. What had prompted this sudden action? Why now? And most importantly, why them? The answer at first was unclear. The officials spoke in legal terms, citing concerns about living conditions. It was vague, almost deliberately so, leaving Betty, Lorraine, and the siblings confused and frustrated. They had lived in this home for years, maintaining it the best they could, navigating challenges together. There had never been any warning that their situation would be called into question. As the siblings were gathered and escorted into vehicles, some in police cars, others in ambulances, the fear was palpable. Lorraine clung to Betty's hand, tears streaming down her face, unsure of when she would see her family again. Timmy, always the fiery one, resisted at first, yelling and demanding answers, trying to comprehend why his world had been upended. Ray, quieter but equally shaken, stayed close to Betty, his eyes wide and filled with questions he didn't know how to ask. The neighbors watched in stunned silence, whispering among themselves. Many were shocked, unable to reconcile the scene before them with the Lorraine they knew, a young woman who had always cared deeply for her siblings, who worked tirelessly to keep their home a safe and loving place. Rumors began to swirl. Some speculated about negligence or neglect. Others wondered if there was some hidden issue that had never surfaced. But for Lorraine and her family, the truth was simpler. They had done nothing to warrant this upheaval. Betty, desperate to understand, reached out to friends and legal advisors. She wanted clarity, but every call and conversation seemed to only deepen the confusion. The state's explanations were partial, technical, and cold, focused on protocols rather than people. "The living conditions aren't sufficient," was the phrase repeated most often, though no one could define exactly what that meant. How could a home that had housed 3 children for years suddenly be deemed unfit? In the midst of the chaos, Betty made a decision. She would fight to bring her siblings home, no matter the cost. She began filing for guardianship, determined to ensure that her family would remain together. The weight of the situation was immense, but her resolve was stronger. This was not just about property or rules, it was about family, love, and the promise that no one could tear them apart without a fight. Meanwhile, Lorraine and her siblings were taken to temporary facilities. The transition was jarring. Familiar spaces were replaced with sterile rooms, strangers in charge of their daily lives. The sense of security they had always known vanished, replaced with uncertainty and fear. Timmy reacted with anger, pacing and raising his voice, while Ray withdrew, clinging to the fragments of comfort he could find. Lorraine, though frightened, tried to maintain a sense of calm, holding on to the hope that things could be corrected. Back at the house, Betty walked through empty rooms, memories filling the silence. Every object seemed to echo with the life they had built together. She touched the walls, remembering laughter, arguments, and late-night talks. She knew that this house was more than wood and nails. It was a home because of the people in it. And without Lorraine, Timmy, and Ray, it felt hollow. Friends and neighbors rallied around Betty, offering support, prayers, and words of encouragement. Social media buzzed with concern, many sharing messages of disbelief and outrage over the state's actions. It became clear that this was not just a family's struggle, it was a story that resonated with anyone who understood the importance of home and family. People wanted answers, and they wanted justice. As part 1 of this story unfolds, one thing is clear: the journey to reclaim what was taken is only beginning. The legal battles, emotional strain, and personal sacrifices ahead are immense. But through it all, the bond between Lorraine, her siblings, and Betty remains unbroken. Their story is a powerful reminder of the lengths we go to protect family and the shocking forces that can disrupt even the most stable lives. Comment below if you've ever faced a situation where a home or family was threatened. Share your thoughts. How would you react if the people you love were suddenly taken away? As the sun rose on the day after Lorraine and her siblings were taken, the house that had once been filled with laughter and life stood quiet and empty. Betty walked through the rooms, each step echoing against the walls as she tried to comprehend the reality of what had happened. It felt surreal, as if she were moving through someone else's life, someone else's pain. The home, which had once been a symbol of safety and family, now served as a stark reminder of everything that had been disrupted. Betty's mind raced. The state's explanation about inadequate living conditions felt insufficient, almost insulting. She knew the house had its flaws, minor repairs, peeling paint, and a backyard that could use attention, but it had been a home where the siblings shared meals, celebrated milestones, and supported each other through life's ups and downs. How could the state deem this home unfit when it had been a place of love, care, and stability for years? Determined to fight back, Betty began to gather evidence. She took photos of the house, highlighting its livable conditions. She documented meals, routines, and even small acts of care that the siblings performed for one another. Every scrap of proof became part of a narrative she intended to present to the court, a story not just of a house, but of a family. Meanwhile, Lorraine, Timmy, and Ray were adjusting, as best as they could, to life in the temporary facilities. The shift from familiar surroundings to sterile rooms filled with strangers was jarring. Lorraine, usually composed and thoughtful, felt a growing anxiety each time she thought about her home. She missed the little things, the smell of her kitchen, the sound of birds in the morning, the warmth of her siblings beside her at night. Every familiar routine had been stripped away, replaced with schedules and rules she had not chosen. Timmy, as fiery as ever, was vocal in his frustration. He demanded answers from every official he could approach, insisting that this situation was unjust. His anger was a mix of fear and confusion, a raw reaction to a world that had suddenly become unpredictable. Ray, on the other hand, retreated inward, seeking solace in small corners, clutching reminders of home like a blanket or a favorite toy. The siblings' responses were different, yet each reflected the same underlying trauma, the sudden loss of everything familiar. Betty reached out to legal experts, determined to take every possible step to bring her siblings home. She filed petitions, requested meetings, and explored guardianship options. Each interaction with the system was exhausting, often frustrating, and sometimes infuriating. Bureaucracy moved slowly, and officials spoke in vague terms, citing policies and regulations without providing concrete reasoning. Every word felt like a challenge, another obstacle in a fight that had already taken so much from them. Social media played a surprising role in their story. As neighbors, friends, and concerned individuals began sharing the news of Lorraine and her siblings being taken, the story gained traction. Comments poured in from people expressing outrage, offering support, and sharing similar experiences. Many expressed disbelief that a family who clearly cared for each other could be separated in such a sudden and seemingly unjust manner. This outpouring of support bolstered Betty's resolve, giving her the courage to continue fighting even when the system seemed overwhelming. But the family's struggle was far from over. Officials insisted that certain assessments had to be made, including evaluations of the home, the siblings' well-being, and Betty's ability to provide care. While these assessments were framed as standard procedure, they felt intrusive and dehumanizing. Each visit from an official reminded Lorraine, Timmy, and Ray that their home was no longer theirs, that their lives were now subject to judgment and approval. Betty found herself constantly strategizing. She had to balance showing compliance with the system while also advocating fiercely for her siblings. Every phone call, every document, every meeting became a step in a delicate dance. She had to prove not just that her home was adequate, but that the family's love and commitment were sufficient grounds for reunification. As the days passed, Lorraine began to show signs of resilience. She adapted to the new routines, finding small ways to reclaim a sense of control, writing letters, drawing pictures, and maintaining communication with Betty. These acts, though simple, became lifelines, preserving the bonds of family in a situation designed to disrupt them. Timmy, too, began channeling his anger into constructive action, working with staff to ensure that their voices were heard and that their needs were clearly communicated. Ray remained quieter, but his attachment to familiar objects and routines provided a thread of stability. In a world that had suddenly become unpredictable, the siblings' experiences highlighted a harsh truth. The systems designed to protect children can sometimes feel impersonal, rigid, and detached from the very lives they are meant to safeguard. Lorraine and her siblings were living proof of how bureaucracy, even when well-intentioned, can create confusion, fear, and distress. Each interaction with officials was a reminder that their lives were temporarily out of their own hands, subject to rules and judgments that didn't fully reflect their reality. Despite the challenges, Betty's determination never wavered. She reached out to community members, local organizations, and even the media to raise awareness about her siblings' situation. Every article, every post, and every supportive comment became a tool in her fight away to keep pressure on the system while ensuring that her siblings' story was heard. She knew that visibility could make a difference, and she refused to let her family's plight be ignored or forgotten. Conversations with legal experts revealed the complexity of the situation. Guardianship, assessments, and reunification processes involved multiple layers of bureaucracy, Each step required patience, persistence, and careful documentation. Betty quickly realized that the emotional toll would be immense, not just for her, but for Lorraine, Timmy, and Ray. The siblings' sense of stability had been shattered, and rebuilding it would require more than legal victories. It would require emotional support, trust, and reassurance. One particularly difficult moment came when an official suggested that the siblings might be better off separated or placed in alternative care temporarily. Betty's heart sank. The thought of her family being broken apart, even for a short time, was unbearable. She argued fiercely, insisting that their bond was strong, that separating them would only exacerbate trauma, and that she was willing to do everything in her power to ensure a safe environment for all three children. Through these challenges, Lorraine demonstrated a quiet strength. She began keeping a journal, documenting her thoughts, fears, and hopes. Each entry became a testament to her resilience and her desire to reunite with her family. Timmy and Ray, too, found ways to cope. Timmy through assertiveness and vocal advocacy. Ray through small routines that anchored him in a sense of normalcy. Together they formed a support system, leaning on one another as they navigated an uncertain and frightening world. Betty also found unexpected allies. Neighbors, friends, and even some officials who had witnessed her dedication spoke up on behalf of her family. They provided testimonials, letters of support, and practical assistance, reinforcing the message that this was a family worth fighting for. Their voices amplified Betty's advocacy, ensuring that her siblings' story could not be dismissed or ignored. Despite the growing support, the emotional toll was undeniable. Nights were filled with worry, days with legal battles, and moments of despair seemed inevitable. Yet, amid the chaos, hope persisted. Betty knew that every step she took, every effort to advocate for her siblings, brought them closer to the possibility of returning home. The struggle was far from over, but the commitment to family remained unwavering. Through it all, one truth became clear. Home is more than a building. It is a sanctuary, a place of love, memory, and belonging. Lorraine, Timmy, and Ray had lost their physical home, but the emotional bonds that held them together remained intact. And as long as Betty continued to fight, there was hope that the siblings could reclaim not just their house, but the life and stability they had once known. The story of Lorraine being forced out of her home is not just about a family or a house. It is a story about resilience, love, and the lengths one will go to protect those they care about most. It is a reminder that even in the face of bureaucracy, fear, and uncertainty, family bonds can endure, and hope can prevail. Comment below if you've ever experienced a situation where your sense of home or family was threatened. How did you cope? How far would you go to protect those you love? The days following Lorraine and her siblings' removal from their home were tense, emotional, and filled with uncertainty. Every moment felt heavy with anticipation, and every decision carried consequences that could shape the rest of their lives. Betty, though exhausted, remained steadfast. She knew that the clock was ticking and that the longer the siblings stayed away, the harder it would be to preserve the sense of normalcy and family connection that had always defined their lives. The first step in the legal battle was understanding the state's rationale in detail. Officials cited concerns over living conditions and suggested that certain improvements were necessary for the siblings to be considered safe at home. But what these terms actually meant was murky, leaving Betty frustrated and determined to push back. She meticulously documented everything: photos of clean and organized rooms, notes on meals, records of school attendance, and letters from neighbors attesting to her care and attention. Every piece of evidence was a brick in the foundation she was building to reclaim her family. Meanwhile, Lorraine struggled to adjust to her temporary environment. The facility was clean, but it lacked warmth. Staff were professional but unfamiliar, and the siblings' routines, so carefully cultivated at home, were replaced by strict schedules that left little room for comfort. Lorraine missed the small joys of home: cooking with Betty, playing games with Timmy, or simply sitting in the backyard watching the sky turn shades of orange and pink at dusk. The smallest of these losses felt monumental, a constant reminder of how drastically her world had changed overnight. Timmy, ever the protector, resisted authority figures at every turn. He shouted, questioned rules, and tried to assert control in a situation where he had very little power. While his actions were rooted in fear and frustration, they also caught the attention of the facility staff, who struggled to manage his fiery temperament. Each act of defiance was both a challenge and a plea. Timmy was trying to assert that he and his siblings deserved respect, that they were still a family that mattered, and that their home and bonds could not be erased by bureaucracy. Ray, quiet and introspective, found solace in the few items he was allowed to bring from home. A favorite blanket, a small toy, and some personal belongings became lifelines for him. Reminders that he was not completely uprooted. He missed the routines and the familiarity of his old life, but clung to these tangible reminders as anchors in a world that now felt alien. Lorraine and Timmy, though frustrated, recognized Ray's need for stability and often tried to create small moments of comfort, reading to him, sharing stories, or even just holding his hand when the fear became overwhelming. Betty, on the outside, faced her own uphill battle. The legal system was slow, each step requiring careful navigation. Court dates were set, documents filed, and meetings with social workers stretched into hours of explanations, justification, and negotiation. Every interaction was exhausting, often frustrating, and sometimes infuriating. Yet, despite the obstacles, Betty refused to give in. She knew that the state's decisions, though cloaked in bureaucracy, were not infallible and that her siblings' well-being depended on her persistence and advocacy. The media began picking up the story, and social media amplified it even further. Community members shared their outrage, expressing disbelief that a loving family could be treated in this manner. Some commented with similar personal experiences, sharing their stories of navigating the state system and fighting to reunite with family members. Others offered practical advice, legal tips, or simply words of encouragement. This growing support network became both a source of hope and a way to keep pressure on the system, making it clear that the community was watching and that this family's story could not be ignored. Inside the facility, the siblings began to develop coping mechanisms. Lorraine started journaling daily, documenting every interaction, every thought, and every moment of fear and hope. Writing became a way to process the upheaval, to maintain a sense of control, and to keep track of their journey back home. Timmy channeled his frustration into conversations with staff, advocating for small freedoms and insisting that their voices be heard. Ray, though more reserved, found comfort in predictable routines, leaning on Lorraine and Timmy for emotional support and guidance. The tension escalated as the court date approached. Betty had prepared her case meticulously, presenting evidence of her ability to care for her siblings, and demonstrating the emotional and physical stability of their home. She also highlighted the siblings' strong bonds, emphasizing that separating them even temporarily could cause irreparable harm. The stakes were high, and the pressure was immense. Every decision mattered, every argument carried weight, and every detail had to be precise. During a pre-court meeting, Betty was confronted with officials who remained skeptical. They questioned whether the home environment was truly safe, whether the siblings were receiving adequate care, and whether Betty had the capacity to handle any unforeseen challenges. Each question felt like a challenge, a test of her resolve. She answered calmly, confidently, and with determination, refusing to let doubt or fear weaken her case. She knew that the outcome of this meeting would set the tone for the court proceedings and, ultimately, for whether Lorraine and her siblings could return home. Meanwhile, the siblings endured the psychological strain of separation. Lorraine grappled with guilt for not being able to protect her younger brothers from this upheaval. Timmy wrestled with anger, struggling to reconcile his sense of justice with the reality that they had been removed from their home without warning. Ray, sensing the tension, grew more withdrawn, relying on the small comforts and routines he could control. Despite their differences, the siblings remained united, leaning on each other for support, reminding themselves that family was more than a physical place. It was a bond that could withstand even the harshest disruptions. Community members continued to rally around the family. Letters of support were sent to the court, neighbors shared testimonies, and online campaigns highlighted the injustice of the situation. Betty's efforts to mobilize support were instrumental, creating a network that not only provided emotional encouragement, but also practical assistance in navigating the complex legal system. The message was clear. This family was not alone, and their story mattered to a wider audience. The court proceedings themselves were tense and emotionally charged. Lawyers presented arguments, officials testified, and Betty spoke passionately about her siblings' needs, her ability to provide care, and the importance of keeping the family together. The judge listened carefully, weighing the evidence, considering the arguments, and ultimately tasked social workers with conducting further assessments to ensure that the siblings' best interests were prioritized. Throughout this ordeal, the siblings' resilience was remarkable. Lorraine continued to journal, Timmy advocated, and Ray clung to his small routines. Each day was a step closer to reunification, a reminder that despite the challenges, hope persisted. The siblings learned to navigate the uncertainty, to find moments of comfort, and to support one another even when circumstances felt overwhelming. Betty, meanwhile, remained a pillar of strength. Her advocacy, persistence, and unwavering love for her siblings kept the family connected, even in the face of bureaucratic obstacles. She understood that every phone call, every document, every meeting, and every social media post contributed to the larger effort to bring her siblings home. And through it all, she never lost sight of the ultimate goal, reuniting her family and restoring the sense of home and stability that had been taken from them. As Part 3 comes to a close, the story is far from over. The legal battle continues, the siblings remain in temporary care, and the emotional strain persists. Yet, the determination, love, and resilience of this family shine through. Lorraine, Timmy, Ray, and Betty are fighting not just for a house, but for the preservation of family, love, and the sense of belonging that every child deserves. Comment below if you've ever faced a situation where your family or home was threatened. How did you cope? How far would you go to protect those you love? The final days leading up to the potential reunification of Lorraine, Timmy, and Ray were filled with a mixture of hope, anxiety, and relentless preparation. Betty's home, once empty and quiet, now buzzed with activity. Legal documents, support letters, and social media updates all converged as she prepared for the next court hearing. Every detail mattered. Every small piece of evidence could tip the scales toward bringing her siblings home. Lorraine, meanwhile, had grown stronger through the ordeal. Journaling had become her daily ritual, a way to process her emotions and maintain a sense of control in a situation that had stripped her of so much. She wrote about her fears, her anger, and her longing for the comfort of home, but she also wrote about hope, resilience, and the unwavering bond with her siblings. Timmy's fiery spirit had mellowed slightly as he learned to channel his energy toward constructive advocacy, working with facility staff and social workers to communicate their needs effectively. Ray, though still reserved, began to open up more, encouraged by his siblings' steadfast support and the small routines they could maintain even in temporary care. The court date finally arrived. Betty, Lorraine, Timmy, and Ray all attended, though the siblings were accompanied by facility staff. The courtroom was tense, every eye fixed on the proceedings. Lawyers presented arguments, officials testified, and Betty spoke passionately about her ability to provide a safe and loving home. She emphasized not only the physical conditions of the house but the emotional and relational stability that her family provided, something no assessment or temporary facility could replicate. Throughout the hearing, Lorraine listened intently. Every word from her sister and every statement from her lawyers reinforced the hope that she could return home. Timmy, sitting beside her, whispered encouragement and reminded her to stay strong. Ray clutched a small object from home, a reminder that the world outside the courtroom still held pieces of familiarity and comfort. The siblings' presence, quiet but resolute, served as a powerful testament to their bond and the life they had built together. After hours of deliberation, the judge made a decision. The state's concerns had been addressed through thorough documentation, community support, and Betty's unwavering advocacy. The court determined that the siblings could safely return to their home under Betty's guardianship, with continued monitoring to ensure ongoing stability. Relief washed over the family. Tears were shed, hugs exchanged, and for the first time in weeks, a sense of normalcy began to take root. The moment Lorraine, Timmy, and Ray stepped back into their home was surreal. Every corner held memories of the time they had spent apart, but also the familiarity that had been missing. The living room, once empty and quiet, now echoed with laughter and conversation. The kitchen, where meals had once been shared, was filled with the aroma of comfort food and the warmth of family. Even the small backyard, where they had played countless games and watched sunsets together, seemed to welcome them back. Betty, exhausted but triumphant, reflected on the journey. The battle had been long, grueling, and emotionally taxing, but the outcome reinforced the importance of persistence, love, and advocacy. She had fought not just for a house but for the restoration of a family's sense of safety, belonging, and dignity. Lorraine, Timmy, and Ray had been uprooted, but through the combined strength of their bond and the support of their community, they had returned to the place they called home. The siblings' experiences left an indelible mark on all of them. Lorraine had grown more resilient, learning to navigate fear, uncertainty, and injustice with courage and grace. Timmy had discovered the power of advocacy, realizing that even in moments of anger, his voice could make a difference. Ray had developed patience and found strength in routines, understanding that small actions could provide stability in a changing world. And Betty had proven that love, determination, and unwavering commitment could overcome even the most formidable obstacles. The story of Lorraine being forced out of her home is more than just an account of a family navigating bureaucracy. It is a testament to the enduring strength of familial bonds, the resilience of children facing upheaval, and the profound impact of advocacy and community support. It reminds us that home is not just a place, but a combination of love, safety, and belonging, and that even when systems fail, the human spirit can prevail. In the days following the reunification, the family focused on healing. They reinstated routines, shared meals together, and spent time simply being together, watching movies, playing games, and talking late into the night. Each moment was a reminder that their bond was unbreakable, and that even the most challenging circumstances could be overcome with love and persistence. The community that had rallied behind them continued to show support. Messages poured in, celebrating the family's reunion and acknowledging the fight they had endured. For Betty, Lorraine, Timmy, and Ray, these gestures reinforced the lesson that even in the darkest times, there are allies, advocates, and people who care deeply about justice, fairness, and family. As the story closes, one truth remains clear: no matter how daunting the obstacles, the power of love, determination, and community can triumph over adversity. Lorraine, Timmy, and Ray's journey back home is a reminder that families are worth fighting for, and that even in moments of despair, hope can guide the way. Comment below if you've ever faced a situation where family, home, or safety was threatened. How did you cope? How did you fight back? Share your experiences, your thoughts, and your support for Lorraine and her siblings. Their story is not just theirs, it is a reminder to all of us of the power of love, resilience, and the human spirit. Thank you for watching this video. Click here to watch another video that might interest you.